I was just in the area near the beach today where I've come for another appointment that's just finished. And it's such a gorgeous day in Melbourne today, 22 degrees Celsius, not a cloud in the sky, beautiful, calm day. The beach is nice and flat. It's not windy, and I thought we should go for a walk, and I'll take you guys on the pier to show you a little bit about my area where I live, or where I live near, and then to talk about something that's been on my mind for a while. But just before I do that, hopefully you can see from the car where we're headed. I don't know, can you see that? If I zoom in, you might be able to see the beach in the distance. Anyway, we're going to go there in a sec, and then I'll explain what it is that I wanted to talk about today, which is instant gratification, right? And something that I used to do when I was a kid, and still do sometimes now, but I used to do it a lot up until the time when I had the stroke, and tried to apply it to stroke recovery, and realized that instant gratification is not something you can apply to stroke recovery. You have to take longer, and you have to invest in time for recovery. So let's just go for the walk now that the cars are almost gone and it's safe to get out. And I'll just make sure the car's locked, and we'll head down to the pier. I didn't bring my hat today, so we're going to make this a quick video, and I'll take you down so you can have a look at the water. So the thing about instant gratification is it kind of sets you up for failure, because I used to do that. I used to have something on my mind that I wanted to achieve, and I would go about trying to achieve it in a very short amount of time. And if I didn't get the result I wanted in the amount of time that I wanted, I would stop going after that particular result. And it wasn't conducive to good outcomes, hardly ever. And it was about getting frustrated all the time that I wasn't getting the results that I wanted. And that meant that after school finished in year 12, I wasn't going to do another 4 years of university when I had already done 12 years of school and wasn't qualified to do anything. I didn't really want to do another 4 years of university to try and figure out what else I could do and what else I could be qualified for. So I opted to go and get a job. And the first job that I got was in retail, selling menswear, which is a good job, don't get me wrong. But it's kind of a dead-end job when you think about the opportunities for somebody after they've become a store manager, where they could go, and the amount of people that have the opportunity to move beyond store manager and get into the corporate areas of a retail organization. There wasn't really much for me to do. So I did that job for as long as I can. But then, soon after school finished, I became a dad. So I finished school at the age of 17 and a half, and by 21 and a half, I was a dad. So being in retail and working those types of jobs and earning the kind of money that I was earning wasn't going to be enough to cut it for me working with the kind of income that I was earning to cover the costs of the family. So I had to find a way to cover the costs of the family while my wife wasn't working and while we had bills to pay. And the way that I did that was to go and work a second and a third job. So I was working so many hours. After my full-time job, I'd go to my evening cleaning job, and on the weekends, on Saturday and Sunday and Friday nights, I would deliver pizzas. And it was all about trying to find a way to make as much money as I could short term. It's just that it's not sustainable. I just answered the phone, that was my brother calling. So it's not sustainable in the long run. And then what that means is that, you know, you have to deal with burnout, you have to deal with just the unsustainability of working so many hours all the time and not having any downtime. And I've complained about that in other videos before and what it led to me. And what I also didn't realize was that it's not investing in the future. It's being done out of desperation. And when something's being done out of desperation, there's nothing good about it. It just gets you to the next stage, but you don't really learn anything about that. And I've tried to not be that kind of guy when I was recovering from my stroke situation. I was trying not to be the guy who was doing things out of desperation, and I wanted to be more measured and learn about the things that I needed to do and invest the time so that they could pay off down the track if they weren't paying off right away while I was going through the stuff that you go through after stroke, all the difficult things. Of course, I hoped that I would get results quickly, but I wasn't getting results quickly and I needed a new strategy, and that's where I decided to take a different approach, an approach that meant that while I was learning things in the short term and getting maybe small wins, that hopefully what they were going to do was add up over a period of time so that they could end up being a big win down the track. And that is a lesson that I had to learn the hard way, because 37 years of going after short-term gratification and not understanding about what it took to grow something for a large amount of time was kind of setting me astray, and it wasn't helping me. Now, I had done other tasks before that were long-term related, like, raising my children. I realized that I wasn't going to get them over the line to be the most amazing adults that they are today in a week or two. I needed to work on that project for a long amount of time, and it wasn't a project that I was going to work on my own. We had to work on it together with the children, with my wife, and with me as a team, sometimes individually and separately, but we had to work on it together. And that was one of the things that I hadn't realized I was doing, and I hadn't realized what the benefits were. I was experiencing the benefits, especially when my children were growing and becoming great individuals, even though they made mistakes, even though they weren't perfect. But I hadn't really noticed that long-term project was getting me results, and all the hard parts of raising them and going through what you go through as a parent with children were going to be worth it, and they were going to pay off, and that I needed to persist and I needed to persevere, and I needed to not lose hope when I thought that they were listening and paying attention, but then they decided to, without thinking about it, misbehave or do the wrong thing, like all kids would. So I remember listening to my brother once in a conversation where he was telling me that he is a guy who plays the long game. And I'm sure I've heard that term before somewhere, but I wanted to really pay attention to what he was saying, and I questioned him a little further about what it was about the long game. And for him, he kind of learnt early on that, short-term gratification, wins that he was getting didn't really amount to anything in the short term. There were probably little ticks that you could strike against the blackboard where you could look back and say, okay, I achieved that, I did that, but they didn't make a massive difference in the way that he went about his life or how it impacted his life. But the long game was what it was all about for him. And when he played the long game, he got massive results that supported him in the future down the track. And I started to pay attention to what he was saying, and I realized that playing the long game was getting me more results than playing the short game. And I'll tell you why. Because I started a podcast in 2015, and I've been doing it for 10 years now, and I've only realized that it's taken me 10 years to get this thing to a point where it's starting to make traction and starting to get the results and the interactions from the people that I wanted to capture 10 years ago. It's just starting to do that now. So it was a really interesting thing to observe the amount of time that I've been doing the podcast, and just finally found that it's starting to reach the people that I needed it to reach. Not only is it reaching them, they are responding that the podcast is exactly what they needed, and they wished they'd found it earlier. And I wished they'd found it earlier as well, but it wasn't to be. I didn't know how to make that happen. I didn't know what I needed to do to get the people that I wanted to see the podcast to find it earlier. So what did I do? I just continued to do what I thought was the right thing, even though it didn't feel like it was getting massive results. And somehow all those things that I did ended up becoming results. And after 10 years, I've finally broken the 5,000 subscriber mark. And when you hear what other people do to obtain 5,000 subscribers and how quickly they get there, it can be a little bit disheartening. And you think, I'm doing all this work, I'm putting all this time, money and effort into creating a podcast and generating this content for stroke survivors to find. And people on YouTube seem to be able to find content on every other niche, on every other topic, on every other little thing that you can possibly imagine, good, bad, or indifferent. But getting people to find content on a podcast about stroke is a really difficult task. So I was reflecting on that in the last few days and few weeks after I hit the 5,000 subscriber mark, and really unbelievably kind of went through that stages of realizing the reason that I'm finally there and finally got there. And I've gained 400 new subscribers this month, and it's on track to gain another 400 subscribers in the next month, and then very quickly be beyond 6,000 subscribers. The reason that is because of the long game, because of persisting and persevering, even when it was difficult, even when I felt like it wasn't making any progress and I wasn't getting anywhere. And see, when I think about why I started the podcast, I never started to get 5,000 subscribers or 10,000 or any other amount of subscribers. I started it just to get one person. If I got one person to find the podcast and it made their life better, I was going to be happy. But somewhere along the line, I lost myself in all of the statistics and all of the data and all of the people saying that a podcast should be doing this and should be doing that, and all the people bragging about the amount of money they're making on their YouTube channel, on their podcast. So I got lost and I forgot the reason why I started it. It was to help me and it was to help other people. And in that, if I was able to create a community with those other people, then that would have been a bonus. That would have been perfectly fine, where we created a community and we helped each other and we understood each other and we made the stroke recovery journey a little bit better. And everything else was meant to be a bonus. It wasn't meant to be the reason I was doing it. Now, I want to continue this conversation in a minute after I show you around a little bit, because I want to talk about how I'm applying this long game to my stroke recovery and maybe give you something to think about, perhaps about how to apply the long game in your particular situation with your own recovery, be it from stroke or any other situation that you find yourself in. But let me reverse the camera for a little bit and let me show you what I see. So this is the Bayside suburb of Port Melbourne, and these are the scenes from this pier that I'm standing on, and I'll go around and show you what I see. I mean, it's sensational today, and I'll zoom in as well. I'll zoom in, give you guys a bit of a better view. So this is the Port Phillip Bay, and this is where a lot of Melbourne comes to get away from the heat. And you can see at the moment there's some people on the pier fishing and hanging out with their families during the day. There's even a swimmer in there. Not sure if you can see the swimmer. And these are the houses that are in the area with the $1 million views. It's a lovely part of Melbourne. So now that you've had a bit of a look at my pier that I'm walking on, maybe I can explain to you what I mean about the long game and what it is about the long game. So one of the questions I get a lot is people want to know, how long does stroke recovery take? Oh man, and I wish I had an answer for them, because every time they ask me that question, I can't really answer that question. All I can say is that 1 month after stroke is still really early. 1 year after stroke is still really early, and I don't want to discourage people by telling them that, but it's the truth, and I want to set their expectations that stroke recovery, it's not like a stubbed toe. You know, you stub your toe on the coffee table, and then by the time the next week rolls around, you remember you stubbed your toe, but hopefully the toe has recovered and it's not injured anymore, and you don't feel all the feelings that the stubbed toe brought to you when you first went through it. And I'm thinking maybe I can give you guys a bit of an insight into the fact that stroke recovery takes a long time, because I'm doing it 13 years later. I am healed. I've said it before in videos. I'm healed, technically healed, in that the blood vessel that burst in my head is no longer there. You know, the scar that I've got on the side of my head has faded and is healed. The process that I've had to go through to get to the 13-year mark has been long and arduous, but it has yielded results. However, I still have left side deficits. I still have fatigue. I still have tightness in my muscles. I still have balance issues, but I still consider myself healed, which means that, well, what do I do now? How do I go about life now? Well, I'm not doing things that are going to impact me negatively, that's for sure. I'm not going about pretending like there was nothing wrong with me and that I can go back to my old self. What I'm doing is making sure that the approach to my health and well-being is different than what it was before, and that I'm trying to minimize the amount of things that I've done in the past that increase the possibility of me being unhealthy or unwell or experiencing stroke or a heart attack or cancer. So I've made a concerted effort to consider myself still healing from stroke so that I don't make matters worse. And by not making matters worse, what does that mean? Well, that means that I just don't want to be the person responsible for putting myself into a situation of potentially another stroke. And because I still have deficits, and because I still feel the pain and the stiffness and the numbness on my left side, what I don't want to do is do the things that are going to potentially make that worse. Because I imagine that inside of my head I have a weak point, and that weak point needs support. It doesn't need me to do the things that make it weaker. For example, if I had a terrible knee and I knew that I couldn't play basketball or run anymore, I don't want to continue playing basketball and running and making that knee worse. So where my brain is injured, although it has healed, it is completely different than what it was before it was injured. And as a result of that, I don't want to jeopardize that spot and increase the area of the brain that is more injured in that area, because it's just going to make my life harder. So I've taken responsibility to avoid doing those types of things. And that's part of the long game. I'm 50 years old now, and I figure that in 20 years, if I do the things that I need to do now, by the time I'm 70, I'm going to be in still very good condition for a person who's been through the things that I've been through. And I want to give myself the best chance of having a high quality lifestyle when I'm 70. So this change in me and in the way that I'm going about my recovery and the way I'm thinking about the future, which I haven't done before so much, is new for me, and it's making a massive difference, and it's making me feel better about the difficult sacrifices and choices I have to make on a daily basis to ensure that I'm going to have a good outcome in 70 years. I heard this saying a little while ago. I don't remember who it was that said it, and I may have mentioned it on a previous video as well, that I want to be the guy who makes the sacrifices now for Bill of the future, so that Bill of the future can benefit from the sacrifices that Bill of today made. And that means for me is being certain I don't consume alcohol or anything that's going to kill brain cells or make the conditions in my brain worse. And also I don't want to consume the types of foods that are going to impact me in a negative way. And I want to make sure that I do everything in my power to experience life the way that I want to be experiencing it, to enjoy it the way that I want to be enjoying it, and to make sure that I'm the person who is my biggest advocate, the person who is my biggest supporter. So as I head back now, I'll just show you my walk back to the car. It's a Wednesday afternoon. How cool. And you know, this is something I wouldn't have done in the past. I don't know why, but you never would have caught me finding time to take a half an hour walk on the pier in the beach on a Wednesday, because it wasn't important enough, because I had work to do. Even though my work was flexible and I could, for example, take a 20-minute break and head to the beach when I'm working in the area, I never did that. So this is what I was thinking today. The camera was in the car and I thought, why not take it out and film in a different location and talk about something that was on my mind. I am curious about you though. I want to know, what do you think about what I said? Leave a comment below. I also want to know how you play your game. Do you play the long game or the short game? Have you found yourself early on in stroke recovery, and as a result, is this a useful bit of content? People have commented about this format. They told me that they love it. So I made a decision to record more of this format, because nobody has ever made that many comments about the previous format, which is still going to be recorded. That's the interviews where I'm side by side with somebody and talking about stroke recovery journeys and their particular situation with it. So this is making me really uncomfortable, because there's people everywhere and I'm talking to a camera while I'm walking. And I thought, I'm going to go out of my comfort zone and I'm going to do this, because in the long term, I'm going to play the long game. I'm going to learn a skill and I'm going to engage more stroke survivors. And hopefully that's going to make a difference in the future, because more people will find the channel, more people will find the podcast, more stroke survivors will recover quicker, faster, better. They'll have more information. They will feel like they're not alone. So this is going to help me grow. It's going to help the stroke survivors in the world find us, make their recovery better. So it's a win-win. But it's really, really uncomfortable, because talking to a camera is something that I'm happy to do in the privacy of my own studio where I record the podcast, but I haven't been happy to do it in public before. So hopefully you enjoyed this content. Please let me know what you think about this video. I look forward to hearing from you. And if you are listening to this rather than watching it on YouTube, come along and check out the YouTube channel. At Bill Gasiamis is the YouTube channel. Subscribe, leave a comment, share. I look forward to hearing from you. I don't know how to stop this video now. I've spoken too much, so I'm just going to pause it now. Thank you for listening.